Hello and welcome back to On the House. Today we have Frank Sondors, who is the CEO and founder of Salesforge, but the Forge suite. So MailForge, LeadsForge, InfraForge, WarmForge, PrimeForge, and Salesforge. And today we'll speak to him about the suite, speak to him about go-to-market. He's got a really rich background in sales and leading sales teams. So there's a lot of really good knowledge and experience that's fed into the tools there. So yeah, without further ado, welcome Frank.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, my friend. So can you walk us through the suite and why did you choose a suite instead of just one tool? Who are they built for? Just give us a quick intro.
That's good. Yeah. So I've been in software sales for well over a decade, and my last gig I had like a sales team of 50. So I ended up buying a bunch of different tools like Outreach and Proposify and a bunch of other tools, and the costs were just racking up, and I always had to deal with these different vendors, different support teams, different everything, and it always felt like we live in a world sort of 2-3 years ago where you're buying a bunch of different point solutions, paying per seat pricing. And then speaking to different support teams, and then you need a sales ops manager to kind of stitch it all together and make it work. It just felt not like what I call the Apple experience that I was looking for. And I was really craving for the Apple experience. So one vendor, one ecosystem, not a lot of sales ops work, not a lot of integration work, and that data would flow nicely from system one to system two, etc. Now, the other problem also was back then that, the only way to scale was through more bodies. So I had a 50 people sales team, 20 SDRs, 10 account execs, mid-management layer, whatever, you name it. And it felt always like this sort of weird thing. You're running a business, you don't want to have all these bodies. Plus, it's not like they're producing a lot. And if anybody has been in sales, so if you worked in sales for a long time or you've been a sales leader, you know that for every 10 salespeople that you hire, only one person's natural. Maybe 2 or 3 people can be trained up. They're like a sponge, right? So they get, you get into feedback and off they go, they implement that and they just get better over time. They're as good as the A players. And then 60% is typically what's called the dead wood, right? And every company has that issue. I had that issue, etc. I hired over 100 people over the course of a year, but I also fired over 100 people over the course of a year. So there's always this sort of issue of people coming and going. And I thought to myself, how can I reduce the number of people down to 40%, increase the output levels, and then you massively increasing the CAC efficiency, so cost of customer acquisition. So that's why we built the Forge stack. So the stack means it has multiple different products. Essentially, it's a modular build, what's called. And the reason why we decided to go down this path instead of the path of let's build a super app, essentially, let's build like the Apollo, ZoomInfo, whatever you name it, is because this space is like massively crowded, like 100 plus competitors that I have on a data front, on the execution front, LinkedIn front, you name it, AI SDR front, whatever that is. And then you're trying to think to yourself, okay, so if everybody's building one app, right, you're on this swimming lane, I want to be in a different swimming lane. I want to be in a consideration set of a lot of buyers where we just look differently. We have a suite of products. And yes, they are decoupled. Yes, it's an ecosystem. And then essentially what it means is this approach has advantages and disadvantages to a specific segment of buyers. But what it allows me to do is, let's say you're on G2 or whatever, you're going to be in a very different consideration. You're definitely going to be in a consideration set. So people will review your stack. And as long as you can justify why this approach is better for that particular customer, we do transition a lot of customers over to us. And the nice thing is about it is you only buy what you need. It's like a Lego stack, right? You can also deprecate some of the things later on. It gives you that flexibility. And that's what a lot of mid-market and enterprise buyers are looking for instead of being locked into a contract with a single app for a year, two, whatever, right? So that's the stuff that we saw. And plus, naturally, all the legacy tools, they do seat-based pricing. We do usage-based pricing, and guess what? The whole world is moving towards usage-based, some towards outcome-based pricing. We're also going to move eventually towards that, but not yet. But that's really the reasons, because essentially the legacy stack doesn't work. It relies on people. It's a one app, and the problem with one app, I always make this sort of comparison. Like if anybody has ever used Salesforce, and a lot of people have used Salesforce, you know that when you log into Salesforce, it's such a gigantic app, and you're barely using 10% of Salesforce, right? And we didn't want to become like the Salesforce in 5-10 years, where I would cram all these features, and then a typical SDR, essentially a college grad, would essentially go into the tool and will be overwhelmed by the number of features. So how can you avoid that? Well, you decouple a lot of the major capabilities into different modular builds. So yeah.
Wow. So are you building then for yourself back in the situation? So there's already quite a big sales team, um, or yeah, I guess yeah, is it built for bigger sales teams? And it's like you say, it's the Apple experience of just simplifying.
Yes.
And so does that mean that people tend to get the whole stack rather than just one or two because you need the stack, right?
Yeah, so I mean, general company strategy would be to land and expand. I would really want people just to buy at least one forge, yeah, right, and then expand from there. But guess what? People buy multiple forges, and then my unit economics is far superior to a typical software company, and that means I can afford to drop prices, and so for the customer, it's much cheaper actually if they buy the whole stack because it's also there's that better user experience. So yes, it's designed for the let's call it the unsavvy folks. So typical SDRs and accountants, etc. It's not designed for sophistication. So there's a lot of softwares out there that are designed for sophisticated stuff, and you as an individual, you have to be relatively competent to know what you're doing. So for example, that would be Clay, that would be other tools like Cargo, whatever. There's a bunch of tools where you kind of have to kind of geek out on it, and you kind of have to know what APIs means, etc. You don't have to know none of that in our tool. We're trying to build to the maximum usability, ease of use essentially, just like Apple is, right? So that like even an intern would just log in and will be able to launch a quick cold email campaign or LinkedIn campaign. Like you want to dumb it down to the max. That's what we're trying to do, and and that means simplification is one of the things that you need to do. So to simplify, you need to decouple the stuff that's in the way, right? So this is why we're building these different products.
Nice. Can you talk us through what the process would be from start to finish? Like obviously like I can think in terms of a small sales team. You probably got a smaller sales team. You used to have a big sales team. Which one are they using first? I imagine they want to find leads. Are they using Leads Forge for that? How are they
Yeah.
then doing the kind of enrichment, filtering, and then how is that going through all the different tools from like start to finish?
Sure, sounds good. So let's say you just want to do some outreach. Let's go, just put it simply. Typically, if you want to do some outreach, say on cold email, then the first step really is you need to set up what's called the email infrastructure. So you never send emails from your primary business domain. You send emails from the secondary email domain. So let's say we have a primary domain called salesforce.ai, but we would never send cold emails from that because every email that goes out, you are at risk of that email being spam reported and your domain being blacklisted. So you don't want to put your risk at reputational damage, right, where then all of your emails will start landing in spam. This is why you set up these sort of secondary domains like try Salesforce.ai, team Salesforce.ai, and so on and so forth, right? And we'll just redirect to the primary. So you need to set that up. And the reason why you need to set up that up first is because you can't just send cold emails from day zero on brand new domains. You need to what's called warm them up, essentially mimic real human behavior on these domains. So we have a tool for that, a premium warm-up solution called WarmForge. You just plug that in. It's free of charge for Salesforce customers. It warms up for at least a couple of weeks, at least 2 weeks, but the best case really is like 1 month. You warm up these domains, and then they're ready to rock and roll. And then you would typically see quite a good deliverability naturally in those domains. So that's step one, really. So while the domains warm up, you typically go and buy some data. So yeah, then you go to LeadsForge. It has like 500 million leads. It connects to over 20 database behind the scenes. So it's like a waterfall enrichment, essentially. You can get LinkedIn URLs, email addresses, and mobile numbers. I'm particularly excited about mobile numbers because they're some of the cheapest mobile numbers on the planet, 8 cents at scale, which is very cheap. Typically, mobile numbers cost about 20 cents to 50 cents to procure from a data vendor. So that's one thing. Then you can build some lookalikes. You can extract followers of LinkedIn of company pages. So there's a bunch of kind of different things that you can do there. So you got your list. You plug that into Salesforce. It's ready to rock and roll. We have the infrastructure warming up. Once it's warmed up, you probably connect also while the infrastructure warms up your LinkedIn profiles of your team because you can connect unlimited LinkedIn profiles in Salesforce. So personally, I have like just for my team 500 email accounts, about 250 domains, and 30 LinkedIn profiles. I send about 10,000 emails at least per week. While we're talking, I'm already sending 2K during this episode. 2K will go out in 1 hour. 2K emails will go out. Just to give you, so each LinkedIn profile can connect to about 100 people per week. That means if I have 30 LinkedIn profiles, I'm connecting to 3,000 individuals on the planet every week. You have about 40-50% acceptance rates, and from that, about 10 to 30% reply rate. So these are the typical reply rates that I'm getting, and this is at scale. That means on a daily basis, at least, I'm getting about, I don't know, like 100 to 400 replies every day. Just thinking of that's the velocity that we operate, and on top of that, we naturally have a dialer that we use from Salesfinity right now, where we do about $2,000 on a weekly basis as well. So like just to give you an idea of the velocity. But yeah, so what we really specialize is if you have a big TAM. So big TAM means we typically say at least 3,000 accounts. So 3,000 companies that you're looking to reach out to. And then per account, you will have typically two contacts that so you will definitely want to do multi-threading. So at least two contacts, I always say, per account that you should be reaching out to increase the conversion rate. That means 6,000 individuals in your TAM you want to be reaching out. You'll need to use a system that is able to scale across email and LinkedIn. And we're the number ones in the space just for this specific pain point that folks are having. So because the system scales really nicely, you don't need that much headcount. Like if you think about the mass and everything, how it works and how much you pay for it, versus other tools that charge per seat and where sort of maybe outreach is more like one-to-one. Our outreach is really good. You can also use AI, etc. But it's more of a sort of centralized approach, programmatic approach, what we call programmatic outbound that you're doing. And this particularly works well if you warm up your audience. So what's typically called inbound led outbound, right? You warm up your audience on LinkedIn. You do some other things. You go to events, and then bam. So when you reach out and you heard about maybe Frank somewhere out there, naturally conversion rates are even higher. On outbound. So we typically get about 10 to 30% reply rates on our outreach right now. So yeah.
This is really interesting. So I'm just gonna play devil's advocate a little bit because I'm thinking like, what is stopping me from buying Salesforce today? What's stopping me from getting the suite today? And that might be like similar to other people. So I'd love you to handle these objections. So for me,
Go on, let's go.
With Apollo, I just gravitate towards Apollo as a database. So what could we do to potentially say, well, LeadsForge has the capability, and then the other kind of one is in terms of warming and email sending. I know Smart Lead and Instantly at the top. How would you overcome that to say no? Actually, switch.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, it's why we typically get in a demo. We do over 500 demos every month, so just to give an idea. So yeah, Apollo comes up very frequently. So Apollo is really good for the data side of things. This typically when you think about Apollo, you think about data. So Apollo is great for data. It has nearly 300 million leads. We've got 500 million. As a result, you just have better coverage, overall better data. Pricing wise, it's kind of comparable. But we also have to do some use cases where that, for example, Apollo doesn't do, for example, extracting company followers off LinkedIn. Apollo doesn't do that. So I would say pricing wise, it's kind of similar, but it's just more data. It's just better coverage, essentially, is the answer, I think. Why would you go with because Apollo is a database, and we are a waterfall, let's call it enrichment solution, with 500 million leads access to across 20 plus database. So Apollo is one database, we have 20. So when you have 20, naturally, more volume, cheaper rates, essentially better coverage, and that's it. That's it, really. Pricing wise is kind of, I would say, comparable. Then why would you not use the point solutions like Instantly and Smartly when it comes to warm up? So on one hand, we operate what we call premium warm up. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but essentially, some of the capabilities around cold email and how we do things, we do it as a premium operation. So it's more costly for us to run, but we much rather run a premium warm up than what we call average warm up. Let's go that way. So there's some kind of aspects on the warm up that we do better. But then the other thing, which is I think a killer thing for most of the folks. So everybody will know that multi-channel, when you do multi-channel outreach, so meaning say cold email plus LinkedIn, that has significantly better pipeline output, right? So better pipeline coverage that you're generating. So as an example, on cold email, let's say if you're just going to do cold email in Salesforce and cold email, let's say on Smarty, whatever, Instantly, you're probably going to see let's say 1 to 5% reply rate, right? And this is let's go the average. If you're doing a really good job, you're probably going to max it about 5%, and that's about it. But if you're adding LinkedIn into the equation, that's 10 to 30%. And guess what? They don't do LinkedIn. So, and that's it. That's how we typically answer that question. So, because we're big believers in the multi-channel outreach, there's no reason why you should not be reaching out to your prospects if they're on LinkedIn. You'd be stupid not to do that. And if you don't know how to scale, just ask me, and I'll show you how we do that and the tricks we use. Whatever, we have a bunch of webinars even on that, etc. So, but bigger belief just in generally multi-channel, some of the features, kind of things, etc. But otherwise, if you're just simply comparing cold email, all the three tools are kind of comparable, right? So generally speaking, there's there are some differences. Sure, the one provider has better API, the other one less, etc. Some this feature, etc. But what really moves the needle is the LinkedIn piece, premium warm-up pool. I would say pricing wise, actually they are different for sure. There are actually some pricing differences in there, and the price is kind of different depending on the units that you're looking at. So this tool may be cheaper, that tool may be cheaper, depending on the customer. So that is another one. But yeah. But again, as I said, the market is like big enough that you'll find enough fans of the Forge and enough folks that believe in the stack, because it's the ecosystem approach rather than the point solution approach, right? The point solution approach meaning you're using instantly or smartly, let's say, just purely for a sequencer, then you're using another tool for data, and et cetera, et cetera. Whereas, again, this approach is like one vendor, one support team, right? And a lot of people like that idea of consolidating. It's a stack consolidation game that we're in. We're in consolidation game, hardcore. So we have 7 products. We're going to build more. And we're essentially going to give you even more reasons to switch over, essentially, from the point solutions. Because for us, the point solutions is what we call the Android experience. Like, do you really want to have the Android experience? Do you really want to be using these different point solutions? Do you really want to be stitching it together all the time? And using, I don't know, sometimes Zapier, whatever, to connect the tools, whatever, and do like a lot of different things. Or you're more of a like, I'm the Apple user, right? So that's why Apple has such a stickiness, because people, it's not about the price, it's about the brand, it's about the experience, how the Apple ID that you can use to sign into this thing, that thing, etc. Well, guess what? We have a Forge ID, similar thing, right? You can use the same login to different softwares, and guess what? Then the data flows nicely, right? So there's all these benefits that we're provisioning for the user, and essentially, the more time will pass, the more people will kind of see that kind of benefit of the ecosystem, and that's really the experience that I was looking for back as a former VP sales, right? So that's exactly what we're building. So yeah.
It's interesting because I completely agree. Like the consolidation helps with the experience, the app, like on the Apple side. But then there's also results. But then I guess you guys are dog fooding and proving that you can at scale. How was it? 250 inboxes? Did you say? I might have got that wrong. But you're
The domains and 500 plus mailboxes. Yes. 30
500
LinkedIn profiles.
mailboxes, and you're booking. Was it 500 demos a month? I think I saw.
Yes.
So you guys are doing this at scale and getting results. So
Yes.
results plus experience. Why not? It does seem a bit no brainer.
I mean, ultimately, I've been in software for over a decade, been in sales for over a decade. You're just trying to build a stack and experience that that will get you results in the fastest possible ways. And yes, the goal is not to use multiple vendors to achieve the pipeline that you're looking for. The goal is to stick what I'm going to call this a strategic kind of vendor kind of concept, like a player in the market that just understands the multiple pains that needs to be solved to arrive to the result I'm looking to arrive to, which is I just need a ton of demos. I just need pipe. And I don't want to be buying all these software, etc. I just want to go to the Forge, get my stack, and off I go. Like, that's the kind of the stuff that we're building. And so there's a lot that needs to be, there's like thousands of problems that need to be solved to build pipeline everywhere. It's not just email deliverability. It's also the LinkedIn automation, how to do that, how to not to get banned, blah, blah, blah. All these topics that need to be tackled. Next year, we're looking to bring in a dialer, so the ability for folks to be calling from the Forge. And so how does the dialer work with LinkedIn? And how does it work with email? And how can we build what I call the power combos between email and the dialer to max out the conversion rate? So I'll give you one example. So when we're gonna launch the dialer next year, what we're looking to do is, let's say we're gonna get a positive reply on email or LinkedIn, and we're going to be doing auto dialing on positive replies. Guess what? This is one of the what's called the power combos in sales. Whenever you get a positive reply, you immediately call.
Wow.
You immediately call. But to do that, I need to own a dialer, right? It's not to integrate with a dialer. No, I'm going to build a dialer, and the dialer will auto. And it's just one of the thousands of use cases that we need to cover to help people to max out the conversion rates within their TAM. It doesn't matter how big it is. People just want a max conversion rate in pipeline. So all of these kind of crazy stuff that you need to do to generate pipeline. And yes, the top salespeople do that all the time. The top salesperson will always go and call and book that individual in. But how can I make an average sales rep be a top sales rep through a software? How can I do that?
One click.
Well, if I will make the software, if I'm going to build in the automations, the agents, and everything, to do a lot of the legwork for that average rep, right? So that's the thought process. So yeah.
You're enabling the rep. You know, you're giving them everything they need to kind of work at their best, whatever that is, whatever their cap is, limit is. Cool. You mentioned LinkedIn automation. I'm pretty sure I looked up Expandy and I couldn't see Expandy recently. I've been speaking. I might be wrong. They might be back up, or but I couldn't find some of the people. So I was like,
Mhm.
And I've been speaking to other people in outbound, and they're pretty hard on manual LinkedIn, and it's kind of got me thinking like I don't really want to be automating. And you know, as you grow your account, it's like becomes more of a risk. So how are you overcoming that objection with people? Yeah.
That's a good question. So I've been doing automation for over a decade, so I have no issues. But then I'm not doing some crazy stuff. So what is the crazy stuff? Where people connect their LinkedIn profile to like multiple automation softwares, LinkedIn automation. So don't do that. Or people use some Chrome extensions that impact the UX of LinkedIn. Don't do that. Your account will get banned essentially because of that, and you think it's because of the whatever the software. No, it's you. It's the user error essentially in a lot of the cases, which is where things start to get you're just doing weird stuff that you should not do, and then your account, yes, will get banned because in the eyes of LinkedIn, you look like a bot. So you want to avoid that. You just want to have what's called a normal behavior. Just so whenever you're looking to do any form of sort of automation, just use one tool, literally, that should be hooked up to your account, and that's all. Because guess what? Two LinkedIn automation tools, they don't talk to each other. So there will be some issue there, and then LinkedIn will see that issue, and you'll get banned. That's one thing. Now, on the front of what's happening on LinkedIn, where sort of companies disappear from LinkedIn, like Apollo and a bunch of other ones. What LinkedIn is really going after is essentially the companies that do scraping. Ultimately, so scraping is a huge problem in the space. Because naturally what happens is you extract the data, that data gets monetized, LinkedIn didn't make any money out of it, the user's not making money out of it, and that data is being farmed, and then some companies make millions and millions and millions of dollars on that data, and LinkedIn is not happy. Now there's some counter arguments to that in the European law. I'm not going to go into that, where some people most likely will pick a battle with LinkedIn. That is what they're doing essentially, and blocking accounts that is not actually acceptable. So the law, maybe there will be some actually happening things next year essentially on this topic. But like ultimately, where the problem lies is if you start to do data extraction, scraping, whatever you want to call it. If you're extracting data and you're using that, monetizing that, etc., there will be issues. However, when you're helping a user to do a particular action, like writing a DM or scheduling a post on LinkedIn, so there's a bunch of tools on that front, right? The Tapley or whatever, that is totally fine. What is not fine is data extraction and making money out of it. That is not fine. But what is fine is you, for example, Joe, you want to write me a message on LinkedIn. So you could write it manually to me, right? Or you could get copy paste, whatever you want to do that. So you do that, or an automation software will execute exactly the same action, right? So you're just assisting the user to do that. So for me, actions of like I would do that anyway manually as a human is okay, and that should be acceptable, and that's totally fine. Data extraction, I can see reasons for that. Why that's not okay. But first and foremost, this thing is because everybody that's scraping on Google, etc., and that is totally fine. That's totally normal, right? It's not like Google bans or whatever, right? So think of it this way: it's just that it's against the TOS of LinkedIn, right? So terms of service, right? So LinkedIn does not allow you to do that, but people still do it because it's not. So it's not that it's illegal. A lot of people say, "Oh, Frank, it's illegal, isn't it?" And I was like, has nothing to do with legalities. It has to do with TNCs. I mean, I also have my own TNCs of my company. Guess what? People come to my software and they scrape my stuff. You know, and then you have to tackle it somehow, right? So we also block people, right? Just as like LinkedIn blocks a lot of folks, whatever. We also block a lot of users. Every day I'm blocking people. I have this magical block button in Slack. I just block people. Sort of satisfaction. Yeah. If I'm suspicious of whatever, I just click the block button every time. I love it. That's my favorite button in Slack. Just blocking people. So yeah.
If someone's listening to this and realize they can no longer see you on Slack, then you know why now. You've been blocked.
Like, yeah, I mean, like nobody wants bots, bad actors, etc. So LinkedIn also doesn't want that. I also don't want to interact with bots on LinkedIn, by the way, right? So like whenever I see a bot like fake account, etc., I'm gonna block that. So that's also against TNCs, right? So I want to interact with real people, right? Build a network, etc. But I'm building a network either manually, right? So my account exists since 2010, just to give you an idea, like 15 years. But I've been doing automation for like 10 years. So and I don't have any issues with automation. But then I'm using the automation studio just to enable me to do the outreach. So instead of me connecting to 100 people manually per week, I'm using an automation software to automate that process, and that's it, right? So I'm not looking to do mass scale data extraction, which some companies do, literally like into millions of records every single day, and then they sell that data at millions of dollars. That is a different operation, right? And that is not fine in the eyes of Microsoft and LinkedIn, and they have the reasons. But I think this is always this sort of cat and mouse game. It's like email deliverability. People wanting to send emails, and then the buyers essentially trying to protect their inboxes. And guess what did they do? Then they install softwares like Fixer, or like there's this sort of Mixmax Shield now popping up, right? So there's this sort of always cat and mouse game. There's always that friction. And same with LinkedIn, right? So there's a lot of data there. Some people trying to extract the data, and then LinkedIn is trying to stop that. LinkedIn did stop some of the data, extractors. Then there's another loophole, whatever. Like, it's always this cat and mouse game. But guess what? LinkedIn is like the best B2B data on the planet, because the users are updating their own data for different purposes, whether that's for networking purposes, getting a job, etc. Is the best data in town. There's nothing comparable to that. So yes, you want to get that data, but I think the problem here is actually LinkedIn. You know why? Because they don't give you the API to the data. They could actually make money out of it. Like you could make it in a very compliant. So I would say it's more LinkedIn should really change. Like the way that things would actually change in this space is if LinkedIn would just, would just give up and say, here's the API, they would charge for the API, whatever would happen, right? And there would be just, the right way to do things. And so the problem is LinkedIn.
You don't see them evolving, really, do you?
What's that?
You don't see them evolving or moving.
Actually, no. And so the problem is it's a huge corporation, and it's not like it's like ChatGPT or Clay, etc. It's like this sort of old school behemoth. And I mean, they make billions and billions and billions. Why change if you make so much money? Why change anything? There's also a risk, I think a fear that if you're gonna change something, the revenue will go down. Like, people will lose their jobs if they're going to change the UI, etc. on LinkedIn. Like, people are really afraid to change anything. But guess what? LinkedIn hasn't changed much over the years. I don't know. It feels to me like the same stuff that I saw 10 years ago on LinkedIn. Not much has changed. I think the only thing that has changed is content on LinkedIn. More people, better people, more people talking about pipeline and GTM, whatever. Like, that has changed. But the platform itself, yeah, nothing has changed, honestly. That's my feeling. And so a lot of people are definitely into this sort of zone. Let's build a better LinkedIn. And it's like the problem is like transitioning people, like millions of people off LinkedIn to another kind of network. I'm not sure how that would sort of look like. So not possible. So yeah, you're kind of stuck with this sort of, again, legacy vendor, legacy software that doesn't change. But it still works at the end of the day, right? So we're all on LinkedIn. We're all doing stuff. My top usage on my app is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And things like that. So even though it's like Microsoft Teams, in a way, like you don't really like Microsoft Teams, but you're kind of forced to use it because all the corporations use Microsoft, and hence they use Microsoft Team. But a lot of users don't like it. A lot of users like Slack, but a lot of the corporations don't use Slack. It's an example. It's kind of similar kind of dilemma there. So I don't see it changing. Like it's just hard to imagine that would change. And that's unfortunate, to be honest, right? But who's going to come after LinkedIn? I don't even know a single company that could actually give LinkedIn a run for the money. But in our case, in our category, there are some whales in the space, and we will give them some hard time in the coming years. And yes, we are going essentially after companies that have a lot of headcount, because we are on the headcount reduction business. We're trying to make companies leaner and meaner, right? So, and there's still a gazillions of companies out there that have huge sales teams, and we don't believe in that world of having a lot of headcount in sales, because a lot of stuff will get automated. You're going to have AI agents running, etc. And as a result, you will need fewer humans. Shareholders want more profit, whatever, etc. It's a capitalism, that we, a capitalistic society that we live in, and things will need to prove. LLMs, etc., will make it possible, and we're gonna see that new world of just seeing smaller teams overall. But that also means when sort of headcount will get reduced, and because it's also easier to build software today, you're going to see a lot smaller companies like SMBs essentially popping up out there as a result of that, right? So that's also how I see sort of the economy kind of changing over time. So yeah.
Interesting. So, shifting gears quickly because I'm fascinated by like like building sales teams and stuff like that. So, like you say, you managed a bigger sales team. Then you started Salesforce. What was that? The Forge, like a couple of years ago. How did you? If you're gonna build a sales team from 0 to say 25, 30, what's the process of doing that in terms of who do you hire first? What incentives do you use? Another quick question to add in is we did some work recently for a client and they were like, we need to book demos, and we were like, but you haven't validated. And they had email only SDRs, and so we started picking up we're not being paid to do that, but I started picking up the phone and calling people just so I know, don't speak to brand, don't speak to marketing, it's events we need to speak to. So like, how do you then do validation to then scale to incentives, targets, the whole thing from 0 to 20 to 25?
Good question. I mean, the initial folks that you need to hire are not that come from a big corporate like Google. Even you don't hire people from Google for your startup, whatever. Um, they're in a very different mindset. So hire people that worked in software companies at, let's call it seed, Series A, Series B kind of, people that scale up companies, and people that are sort of hackier. But like generally speaking, in the early days, you only need like whenever you're starting an initial team, you only need 2 sales reps at least to kind of benchmark them, etc. And in order to figure out, let's go product market fit and product channel fit, well, you need to be doing testing for sure. So, but testing means, yes, you don't just do one channel. We have like 50 channels, just to give an idea. So we test whether a channel works or not, whether it either has a direct response, meaning we're generating demos, or it assists other channels. Some channels are not about booking demos.
Yeah.
Some channel is about assist to the core channel. And so people don't understand. Like, I'll give you an example of how the thought process. A typical buyer doesn't matter your enterprise, not enterprise, but the way that you close a deal, or like how you kind of move through the purchase journey is you have multiple touch points of that user. So, like just like we do outreach, you don't just do outreach on email. You would also have a touch point on LinkedIn, and you would call them, etc. And you'll do some stuff on social media. You show an ad. You're gonna go to an event, and it doesn't matter your enterprise or SMB. You will need to do these touch points, and the more touch points you have across multiple platforms and channels of outreach, the more likely you are to convert. A lot of people believe that this single channel is the channel. But that's not the case. Typically, everybody knows that when you do multi-threading, you do multi-channel, you will drive better conversion rate, etc. And sometimes you need to know what are the combinations there. The combination is like in order for me to convert better, let's say on cold email, well, maybe the combination is that I need to be always on LinkedIn and I need to be always on Reddit. So you need to test that. And the best way to understand when things work, when things don't work, is to track what I call first touch attribution and last touch attribution in your funnel. And so first touch attribution would be simply people signing up on your site, for example, and we have this sort of open field where we ask, where did you hear about us? And sometimes you're gonna get like random stuff like, I met Frank at the bar, right? And that's great because you want this sort of juicy insights. A lot of people like this sort of drop-down field, and that's an error. It's a huge error that you're doing when you have a drop-down field of where do you hear about us. Not gonna go that too much in depth, but like essentially the field that wins the most is the number one. People just click on the first one. So if you're just gonna put podcasts as the first thing, guess what? People are just gonna click on the first one, and you're gonna say, great, people hear about us on podcasts. We should do that. Right? So that's why you never do a drop down. You always do a open field, and just let people type in whatever they want. And if they type in some gibberish, then get rid of it. Like essentially, just say unknown. It's much better for it to do that rather than having bad data coming into your funnel.
Yeah.
I want to know that people have heard about us through Frank or whatever, through other colleague or whatever that is, because you can say, actually, the true attribution is founder-led sales or whatever, Like, so we have literally now a CRM, a category called Frank. And you can call it founder-led sales kind of, because people will hear about me in a lot of different places. So that drives pipe, right? So we should do more Frank stuff, and so to understand, you need to understand where the first touches are coming from. And then other channels are more for the last touch. Like, what are the last touch? Like essentially booking a demo. Like, how do we get to actually book the demo? And so this is where we send a cold email. This is where we're gonna do cold call, etc. For last touches. But what are the first touches that we're doing? What's the awareness that we're pushing? Are we going Reddit? Are we gonna have build whatever? What are the first touches that we're pushing people into the funnel? And so, yeah, because the funnel is not like very linear, right? So like with one channel, etc. That's not how things work. But so yeah, these are sophisticated funnels. But then what you're saying, Joe, is like, yes, you can also call up and just book them in. Sure, that can also work. But guess what, Joe? Your job will be much easier if you're gonna call up and you're gonna say, "Hey, this is Joe from this company," and they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, I heard about you."
What if you can't
Right?
control marketing though? What if you can only control pure sales?
I'm gonna give you an example then, Joe. Just send them direct mail, send them a postcard. It should arrive within 7 days, and you're gonna call them on week 2. Hey, John, how's it going? Did you get my postcard?
So Christmas is a great example, like
Control.
sending Christmas cards.
There is a provider in the UK where you can use them to send postcards. So send a postcard and then call them, as an example. So just a Christmas postcard, just send it off. So yeah, or you can just call them up, but your conversion rate you will struggle on also on the phone. Like, just try to think of something, a bit of a pattern drop. Postcard, step 1, wait a week, and then in week 2 you're calling. And you're calling everybody, and you're just asking a simple, "Hey, John, Merry Christmas, whatever, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, whatever." And then you say, "Did you get my postcard? I've sent it over to you." You know what we used to do when I had a sales team of 50 people? We used to send an email that was a step 1 on day 1, and then we would call the next day and saying, "Hey, John, did you get my email last night?" And that was the opener. It worked really well. That's all. So you definitely use multiple things. Like, I always believe, like, don't just call out of the blue necessarily. Like, sure, you can do that, but like most people will struggle on the phone. They need a good opener. Do you get my postcard? Do you get my email? Like, or whatever else, right? So you need to sort of latch on something, kind of kick off conversation much easier. So I believe that still works and will always work.
Just outbound marketing. It's combining outbound marketing with outbound sales. You're not just going bottom of funnel. You're actually purposefully doing like and it doesn't need to be like a give. It doesn't need to be like, here's this amazing resource for you. It can be like, hey, here's a postcard, like, we're thinking of you, sort of thing. It can be thoughtful.
Yeah. Be thoughtful. Essentially think of it. Be different. Like, when was the last time you, Joe, got a cold call? Somebody saying, "Hey, Joe, do you get my postcard?" I never got a cold call like this, to be honest. Just do like nobody else would do. Like,
It's true.
because everybody does all the same crap. Just calls up and like whenever, let's say I get a lot of cold calls, and I'm trying to figure out, whether there was like a unique angle, like, or something unique about this. When there's nothing unique that I felt about it, I don't feel like a good recall. I don't feel positively about it, etc. Like, a lot of people are reaching out to me. Like, but whenever somebody does things unusually, like essentially it interrupts the pattern of my day and stuff like that, I remember them better. I want to talk to them. They made my day better. I maybe smiled, for like a second or so. And as a result, I said okay to the meeting, right? Just think of, let's call it creative campaigns or just different ways of doing things. And
Can it be an email?
so
Can it be a Merry Christmas email, or is that just too easy? That's just too simple.
yeah, so campaigns have to be timely. So guess what? We sent a campaign today. I can't say what the campaign was about because it's a bit sensitive, let's call it that way. But it was related to do with Christmas and politics, literally. So
Bring in
but maybe
politics.
Yeah, politics. Yeah, literally. Um, yeah, you could also do that in UK. So yeah, it was literally related to politics. So the idea is that you want to trigger a response, and you can use any world events to trigger a response. So let's say if we are going through U.S. presidential elections, you can talk about Trump versus whoever, right? Biden, whatever, and you can use that to trigger people to respond back. Essentially, just think, what would make this segment, this ICP, respond back to me, right? What is the angle? So I don't know. Let's say the elections are coming up in the UK. The angle could be like, hey, are you voting for Lib Dems or are you voting for Conservatives? Like, who are you? Like, it's like it's a bit of like an opener. I have to think about the copy, but like you can use these different things like politics or something else that's happening right now this week, and you're latching on that. And that's a pattern trap in itself because nobody does that. Like honestly, like 99% of the cold emails or whatever, LinkedIn messages would never reference a current event happening in that location or in the world to open up a conversation. But this is something that me and you, Joe, we would do it in the bar. So I always say, how would you reach out to somebody like you'd reach out to somebody at a conference in the bar to start a conversation? You would talk about something that's happening like right now in that location, in the world, in the US, whatever, in your market, to start a conversation. Because ultimately, the problem with outbound or any form of outreach is like you need to learn how to start a conversation, how not to be a sales rep, how to have a dialogue, and then yes, it does lead. Like I was just wondering whether you have this pain that I could solve for you, etc. So starting conversations, getting replies back, that's the art of sales, and where you need to like work on a copy and etc. And yeah, that is the struggle that a typical sales rep has, like to just simply to start a conversation. So the A players know how to start conversations because they are, I don't know, going to bars all day long to a pub, and stuff like that. And they know that it's natural just to have a dialogue back and forth. And then, yeah, you just wondering whether they have a particular problem that you could solve. And if that's not the case, that's fine. You hang up, you call the next person, and yeah, and it's hard to train, I think, also reps on this sort of thing. But for a lot of people, it comes, quite out sort of naturally, right? So when they do that, and that's why they also book a ton of demos because they know how to start conversations. So if you know how to start conversations, you will book a ton more. So starting a conversation should be like what's called a micro conversion before booking a demo. The booking a demo is like a macro conversion, but you need to figure out what are the micro conversions that
Yeah.
have to happen till that demo gets booked. So one is learn how to start a conversation, learn how to do social selling. Like all these kind of the different things like need to happen for you to get to more macro conversions essentially. And yeah,
What are your thoughts on this? So, like, do you want salespeople's personalities to come out, or do you want to kill their Like, for example, what you're saying, I was actually having a dream last night. I was like, I could start calling up local businesses. Everyone hates the current government at the moment. I could say, look, the only
yeah,
way to beat this terrible government is to get more sales. So let's have like let's have a chat. So it that's not so much controversial because everyone hates this government. But what I'm saying is if there's something that's maybe 50-50 polarized, do you think it's better to just bring up the topic but stay out of having an opinion? Or what
Joe,
do you
I'll,
think?
I'll give you an example of a campaign I run last week or 2 weeks ago. It's kind of similar. It's not politics, it's about our space, like software space. And the question was to the ICP, what do you think about clay versus freckle? That was the question. It's the same as politics or whatever else, right? So people have an opinion about this or that or this, etc. So when they have an opinion, etc., that's kind of how you start a conversation as well, right? Are you more into this? Are you more into that? Are you more into Apollo? Are you more into etc., right? So you're starting a conversation, and then you're saying, "I totally get that. Yeah, I'm also more of a clay user or whatever, freckle user, whatever that user is." But 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 then you're still like, but this is how we would actually solve. This is a different angle. This is the third angle. Our angle, like, whatever. Like so, that's just an example of how I would do it in the software space. I would just take two big players let's say in the data space would be like, let's say with the legacy vendors, let's call it, would be, are you more of a Zoom Info user or more of an Apollo user? You know,
Yeah.
not a like, see, like, and there are hardcore Zoom Info fans and there are hardcore Apollo fans.
Yeah.
And so I can figure out the audience who I should send this to, and they will have an opinion. And just think about, what is what people have an opinion about, in your space, and try and do some sort of comparison and just ask them a question, just like,
Ask
again, like he was
questions. You don't
off
need
in the
to give
bar,
your
right?
opinion. You can ask for
Yeah.
their opinion.
Yeah. So they told you, oh, I think about XYZ. Is like, I'm more of a, and then I would say, oh, cool, I'm more of a Clay user
Yeah.
because of XYZ. Ah, so cool. And that's how we started a conversation. Like, honestly, like, just
That's
think
good.
about doing, back and forth a bit of ping pong. People want to avoid the ping pongs, but guess what? That's not how humans work.
Yeah.
It's not like you send a cold email and you book a meeting. That's not how it works. There will be a bit of a ping pong. So learn how to do a ping pong as fast as you can, and then yes, have the least amount of ping pongs to get to a demo, right? That's how, let's call it, if you need a framework, whatever. And it works. That campaign is beautiful. It works very well because people have opinions about Clay versus whatever, or Apollo versus Zoom-Info or whatever else. So it's a great way to start a conversation really with a lot of people, especially in spaces where they're very, very opinionated about things, and or they're like big brand believers of this brand versus, and anybody else is not a good software, whatever. Like, there are a lot of people like that. So
Yeah.
I also have my own opinions, but I'm biased. My brand is not as big as the brand of these guys, right? So, but how can you take your tiny brand or whatever brand we have and make it bigger? Well, if you start comparing yourself to that bigger software, right? So it's like ClickUp versus Jira, kind of. If somebody's familiar, so like ClickUp also tried to pull itself up in terms of the brand, so they started to compare itself to Jira. And same, also this sort of company, Freckle, also that's saying, I think, something along the lines, we're the best Clay alternative or something. You're essentially saying you're the best alternative to this bigger brand, right? So this is how you can kind of push yourself up. And then, yeah, that's not a way to kind of start a conversation. Politics, whatever. There's something else, that doesn't come to my mind, but like something naturally that will happen in the market. I think in the market, something that's happening is the best kind of thing. It could be in logistics, could be in whatever the space you're in, and then there are some two vendors, whatever, they're competing against each other or whatever. The other stuff that people really love is drama, and Joe, I'm not sure. Are you aware about the RB2B case versus Six Sense, the cease and desist letter? No, anyway, there was a cease and desist that came from Six Sense to RB2B. And so again, you could, like, if you can figure out the RB2B or Six Sense audience, what it is, you would send them an email or whatever message saying, "Hey, have you seen the cease and desist case that was sent to Adam Robinson from RB2B by Six Sense? What are your thoughts on that?" And you're just starting a conversation.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh, this is crazy. This is like," people just go wild,
To someone you've never
So
met before, this is the first cold touch. You can do this.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Like, so I'll give you an example how I would go about this is, so I would go extract all followers of RB2B. I would then segment that audience, right? Let's say we have 50% of the followers. I would reach out to them. And let's say then Adam Robinson decides to post on LinkedIn about season desist from Six Sense. This is going viral, blah, 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 blah. And so you need to be timely. When something goes viral, I'm reaching, that is a signal. You go and do the outreach. This is fantastic. And then the outreach is very simple. Hey, did you see the cease and desist letter by RB2B? What are your thoughts on that? So, and guess what? People will have an opinion on that thing because it's already going viral on LinkedIn. And just try and package that into an outreach campaign. And there could be something else that's going on. It could be, for example, Lovable just announced 300 million round yesterday. So whatever, that could be also an idea that you reach out maybe to somebody about, what are your thoughts? Lovable is registering so much money. Do you think Lovable is a thing? Will it last? Because a lot of people think that Lovable will not last. Like all these companies will not last. They will die. So there's also people that have an opinion about these tools, these wipe coding tools, that these are not solid tools. Engineers will never, never adopt them, whatever, So people have an opinion about it. And that's an example, again, something that you can use. Even you could call Joe, people, and it's like, hey, I'm just doing a little survey out there, just wondering, are you more of a lovable fan or more of a Replit fan, or what fan are you? Just wondering, it's a, and but you frame it, as a, I'm doing a bit of a research. Just wanted to ask you a question, if you don't mind. And we're just trying to figure out whether people are more kind of, leaning towards lovable or decided to, etc. And you could do that on a call even, right? So, um, yeah, it's like you ask me a question, Joe. What about the Forge versus Apollo, etc. It's kind of similar, kind of, and then I have an opinion about it, right? So yeah.
It's relevance and timing, and it's news as well. It's just it shows the importance of keeping up with what's going on
Yeah, but
in the
this is why you need to be on top of your game. So whenever a news pops today, you need to start thinking about, in your category, in your niche, right, that you're in, what could I do with this? And it has to be like this. Within 24 hours, you have to launch. That is the problem. There's this acronym GIT, just in time thing. If some people have gone to university have learned about the GIT, I did it like a business module at the University of Bristol, I think back then. It was like GIT, just in time. Yes, I get that, just in time. Everything's just in time. It's like timing matters, right? So the news has popped, and so you want to build a campaign literally as quickly as you can. And you need to fire it off. So, for example, I'll give you so we have thought of a campaign today, which already is going live as we're talking right now. But I came up in 10 minutes yesterday. In 10 minutes, because I was like, oh, then this could be a really cool angle. Let's just launch. And that's it. So it just launches, and there's about 2,000 people right now in the sequence right now going out, and it's this sort of campaign like a patent trap. You're gonna look at it, it's like, damn. And we could get good press actually about it, or bad press on LinkedIn. But it's fine. We're taking risks. There will be some sensitive topics, but we are the company that has the balls to launch some sensitive. You have to have the balls. And sure, you can have some backlash on LinkedIn, whatever, about this stuff. But it's a calculated risk that you want to take. You don't want to send another boring email, another boring message. You don't want to have another boring call, whatever to be doing. You want to do things differently, and people will remember for you for that. They'll remember for your brand recall. So an example of that on LinkedIn, for example, Joe, have you seen my BAFTA video on LinkedIn?
I haven't. No, I have to look it up.
Anyway, so an example again of that is people scroll through LinkedIn feed and they feel like the feed is very boring. I saw the same stuff people talk about, and then what we would do to kind of spice things up, so we do a lot of what we call edutainment on LinkedIn. So essentially, you're combining the ability to essentially you want to combine education with entertainment.
I've seen your
And
movies, your movie ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called movie skits that you would do. So we decided to take the Margot Robbie scene, and it's my feature section. Somebody wants to check it out, and then instead of seeing Margot Robbie just like you would see it in the movie, so this nice, beautiful lady, you would see me in a bathtub, and that's a definite scroll stopper, etc. And that's what I could describe creative marketing. And guess what? Just like we're right now on the pod right now, or whatever, I would send a cold email, etc. You can reference that. But if people are very active on LinkedIn, you can just ask them, did you see my BAFTA video? And it's like, no, and then they'll become very curious. They really want to see the BAFTA video. But there's other crazy stuff that we would do, like movie skits, AI videos from Sora. On April Fools, for example, I did like this fantastic post where I got fired. And anyway, there's a lot of different kind of things that we do, but like the idea is to have essentially a strong brand recall that people will even remember this post in 5 years. And it gives you this sort of the brand sort of equity, essentially the brand power. So when you're going to call up to somebody and you'll say, "Hey, my name is Joe. I work at the Forge. I was just wondering how's your email deliverability like, right? Like, imagine you're going to call up and the guy will be like, are you from the Forge? What the guy was in the bathtub? Like, you want that to be a conversation, right? So it's like, yeah, that company, yeah. And so that's why we do a lot of these, crazy things. And again, this is an example of you're warming up the audience. So when you're doing the outreach on a call, email, whatever, people will know kind of who you are. For good or bad reasons, whatever, right? Some people may not kind of be into that thing, but they will have heard about you. They may have seen that video, etc. So yeah.
Do you know what's really interesting that I've learned about you actually? About this time a year ago, I started doing outreach, And because I didn't know what I was doing, I was one of those people that would send a big long message and it was all about me rather than them. Because I was just new to the game, I didn't really know how it worked, and I got a bit of like a few negative responses, and it can't. And from then on, I was like, no, I need to care about brand. And then, but the funny thing about that is, trying to focus on brand actually just meant that I didn't really stand for anything because I was just too soft. And I kind of think about recently we've been doing a lot more of this stuff again, but I'm thinking about you, and it's like actually because you're opinionated, because you actually kind of show yourself, that is brand. Like the fact that you will piss some people off is brand because you actually have a personality coming through. So I find it fascinating that you're a sales guy, you're very knowledgeable, and you are also bringing out your own personality. You've not like killed your personality to the point where you're just kind
Yeah.
of dead
I'll give you an
inside.
example. Oh yeah, I'll give you an example of that where I piss people off all the time. So if you're gonna look at my LinkedIn profile, there's a bacon emoji and it says, "I help you bring home more bacon," right? It comes from the US sales culture. We're bringing home the bacon. We're gonna bring home. Where's the bacon, guys? Where's the bacon? But guess what? When the vegetarians look at it, people move. So I have some customers that are vegetarians. They don't feel good about me, and I literally have some conversations with people, and I even have an email address, bacon at that I send emails from, and people don't even feel good about the email address because it says bacon at, and they're vegetarians. They have a little guinea pig, whatever, like, and they're like, this is, I'm not, they get very sensitive. But that's exactly the emotion. Like, you have to have either, it's what I call cultural affinity. And the cultural affinity here is like, I'm selling to salespeople in the US, sales leaders, etc. They're all about bringing home the bacon. They don't say it publicly on LinkedIn. But guess what? In the office, they're like, guys, let's bring home the bacon. Where is the fucking bacon? They're into that. So use the internal lingo on LinkedIn
Mm.
to connect culturally with your audience. And because nobody else was using the bacon emoji, which is, I'm very surprised about it, actually. I would expect American companies to be doing this, but I'm not an American company. So I have to tell them about bringing, a European has to tell them all about bringing home the bacon and how it's done, boys and girls. So yeah, so it's also a bit of a patent interrupt as well, because it's not a boring headline also on LinkedIn. So like the same with subject lines on email and
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Like, be different. So everybody understands whenever, let's say if I'm gonna connect with you, Joe, today, and my subject line says, "I help you bring home more bacon," and if you're in sales, you'll be like, "Fuck yeah, let's connect." Like,
Yeah.
like it doesn't say like I'm an account exec, blah blah blah, whatever, like typical title, kind of boring stuff on headline. Spice things up, just trying to be different, have a brand, company brand, personal brand, right? But yeah, around the audience that you're looking to connect with, that will make your job easier with connection rates, reply rates, build brand easier, connect with people, help your employees or your team as well to connect better. Because my brand helps my employees to convert better, right? So that's how you have to think about it. And a lot of people don't just invest into all these topics, and then they wonder why their outreach just sucks because your inbound game sucks. That's why it sucks. And so invest into these assets like the website. If you wondering what's a good website, go on our website, Salesforce there, have a look at it. That's what's called the top 1% in the world website for conversion rates and etc. So if you're going to ask very smart people about how to do conversion rate optimization on websites, our website is top 1% in the world for what we do. And so your website has to be solid. Your social media game has to be solid. Other assets have to be solid, essentially. And if you don't have your house in order on that front, like, don't even start doing outreach because you're just not very likely to convert essentially people as well. So I challenge a lot of my customers, like they want to do outreach and we jump on the demo. I was like, sorry, but your website like really sucks. So I don't think you're gonna be successful. And I'm just honest with them, right? Because I know they're gonna fail anyway. Because if the guy would send me an email and now I would check their website and the website would, I would see the website. I don't want to do business with you. You don't look credible at all. So all of these kind of business basics, people don't do them even. So I have to indicate about general business stuff, build a normal website on Webflow, whatever, or go and optimize your LinkedIn profile. And to help people with the business basics, I'm running these webinars. So let's say on the 6th of January, you're going to run a webinar about how to pimp up your LinkedIn profile, for performance, because LinkedIn profile is an extension of your company and it generates leads, right? And you have to understand that LinkedIn is a, part of the funnel that generates leads and people don't get it. So
Quick. Quick question on. Look, I know we're a bit over time. How are you for time? Because I don't want to be respectful. How are you doing?
No, I'm still having a couple minutes. So yeah.
Should we say 5 minutes? 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
final question then. How would you? I've got about 15 questions. I'm not 20. Loads of stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We can. It's an excuse to do it again. But in terms of like sales, then like, do you believe that because there's spiky versus being refined, and like you can try and become more refined, use better language, be more kind of be cleverer, or you can be direct and be like. And I notice you're kind of more direct, or are you flicking in and
Yes.
out? Like,
It depends on your audience. So I think when you're selling to salespeople, founders, sales people, etc., directness works better. Um, it depends on the audience, honestly. You need to know your audience. How do they
yeah,
like to buy? How do they like to purchase stuff? You need to know that, and to know that, do what's called user interviews. You don't jump on a call and do demos. No, just say, I would really like to just do a quick user interview. I'll give you 50 quid Amazon voucher just for your time to appreciate. I just want to ask you a few questions. You do like 20 to 40 interviews. You gather some data. Put that into ChatGPT, look for patterns, and then change your strategy based on what people have said. That's what I did. Before starting the Forge, I did 40 user interviews. I got 4 paying customers before even shipping a single line of code to validate whether what I'm about to do, whether it even makes sense or it's just in my head. So yeah, like people don't do that. They just skip these steps. Of course, you can skip the steps if you are what's called a domain expert like me. You have been in sales and in the trenches for 10 years. Yes, you know what you're doing. You don't have to ask all these questions. You don't have to, spend Amazon vouchers on doing user interviews or whatever. But most people are not domain experts. So if you're not a domain expert, do your research. And people just skip these things, and then they come and complain that cold email doesn't work or whatever, something doesn't work because they don't know how the audience interacts and how they do things, how they buy stuff, etc. And yes, so kind of going back to what you were saying about cold calling versus email, whatever. Just like I do a lot of tests every quarter, every month actually, we do a lot of tests. We just try and figure out what works, what doesn't. That's all. But the only way to have more winning tests is by doing more tests. Just to give you an idea, to have one winning test. So essentially, for every 10 tests that you would run, experiments that you run in your business, only 1 or 2 will win typically. So to have more winning tests, you have to run more tests, a ton more tests. You don't know what's going to work. So you're saying call calling, great. But what about the other 10
yeah.
tests or 10 channels? Like, like that's the only way to compound and grow. That's how we get to 500 demos a month. Only through a very religious sort of way of doing testing every month.
Wow.
We test, test, test. Do we have statistical significance? Did we do enough volume?
So you're
Can we
going broad.
comfortably
You're putting the net out. You're not going testing email. You're testing everything. You're
exactly
throwing
everything?
everywhere.
WhatsApp, outbound, SMS, a call calling, direct mail, you name it. Give me anything, Joe. I will go and test because the only way to know whether something works or not is just do it. Does it theoretically make sense of running this test? Yes. Let's just do it because time is money. I don't have weeks, days even to think about whether it's a good test or not. Just explain me the logic and give me an elevator pitch, 5-10 minutes. Does it make sense? Yeah, let's go ahead. How much is it gonna cost? 5K. Let's go. Whatever. Because the problem is people think about it, and time is money. Things have to move very fast today, especially with AI, etc. Things have to go. The growth is not like this. It has to be like this. But to have this sort of mega growth, you have to be like an experimentation game. Kind of always experimenting, always testing stuff for at least typically you say 2-3 months. Some people experiment for a week and then they want to see results within a week. Dude, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You need to commit to 2-3 months testing time frame, see if it works or not, and then either call the test a winning test or it's a loser, right? And that's it. So 8-9 out of 10 will lose, 1 will win, and you should say yes. And then the one that did win, we're gonna scale it up 10x to recoup the losses of the lost test. Right? That's how you have to think about it, and that's how you grow, and that's it.
It's the hockey stick curve.
Yeah, but you don't know what's gonna work
Yeah.
until you test it, right? But how do you know which one's gonna win? Well, the only way to do that is just run more tests, and then you got to have a lot more winning tests, and then that's how you scale a company.
Look,
That's why people raise money to do a lot of tests.
yeah, I'm with you. Look, Frank, honestly, I could speak to you all day, but I want to obviously let you carry on with the rest of your day. Just so final then, where should people follow you, connect with you, and where can they learn more about the Forge?
LinkedIn. If you just type in bacon into LinkedIn, I will be the first result.
Fantastic, awesome. I'll put the link in the description. And yeah, I just want to say, Frank, like genuinely, this has probably been one of the most enjoyable episodes. I've just thought it's been packed with value, and yeah, have a good Christmas, mate, in Vilnius, and yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Thanks for having me. Cheerio.
Thank you.